Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. Welcome to the Health and Human Services Council Committee. Today is May 1st, 2024. We're here in Council chambers. It's 5 p.m. and folks are more than welcome to join online or here in chambers. However, we do not accept public comment at our committee meetings. Tonight we just have one topic to discuss is tenant protections. And we'll have two presentations. The first presentation will be it was a recorded video from Chris Collier from the Housing Authority of Snohomish County, and he's going to share, he's our local expert on all things housing and market related here in Snohomish County and the city of Everett, and he has graciously recorded a video for us this evening to share a little bit more about what we're seeing in increases in costs and pricing for folks who are renting in the city. And I haven't had a chance to look at the video yet, so it's also going to be news to me, so I probably shouldn't say what's in the video without actually having watched the video first. But Jennifer, if you could tee it up for us to have the 6 or so minute video, that'd be great. All right, get your popcorn.
Can't be there tonight in person. I am currently at the board meeting for the Alliance for Housing Affordability, but I was invited to speak tonight and talk about a rental snapshot in the city of Everett and a little bit of Everett's renting history. And not wanting to miss the chance, I decided to record this presentation, which I'll try to keep to about 5 minutes. Okay, really quick, what the Alliance for Housing Affordability is, where I am instead of with you guys tonight, is it's an interlocal agreement between 15 cities, the county, and the County Housing Authority to support the members in understanding and responding to housing unaffordability. So this presentation, this quick snapshot, is to help in the understanding. And you see the cities listed here: Arlington, Darrington, Edmonds, Everett, and so on and so forth. So let's get to what rent has done in the city of Everett in the last couple years. By unit type, studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s. You can see that adjusted for inflation, the rent has basically stayed flat until 2013, 2014, and then it begins to rise. We have a data gap, 2017 to 2022, but we can see that things are higher today. What do we see here? Rent, again, was stable 2000 to 2014 with local variation based on some buildings coming online and so on and so forth. A data gap between 2018 and 2022 when my previous provider, Dupree and Scott, closed up shop, and I took that time to figure out a new approach to rental data. But nevertheless, we can see that rents are considerably higher than they were in 2017 and earlier. Regardless of what happened in that gap year, that gap time for the city of Everett, rents are way higher today than they were then. Rents have tapered off a bit in 2024, excuse me. 1 beds, for example, are lower today than they were in 2023. Studios about the same, 3 is a little lower, 2 is a little higher. So a little local variation that we'll continue to watch. But this is the picture of rent in Everett. So what this leads to, this increasing rent, which has risen faster than incomes, is the percentage of a renting household's income that goes to rent every month. What is that today in 2022, I should say? Less than 10%, pretty good, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, on and on and on. And you see 50% really jumps out as a high category. Above 30% of your income going to rent every month, you're starting to make hard choices about paying rent, providing food, transportation, clothing, healthcare, and other essential needs of your household. Certainly, you're struggling with saving if it's not completely off the table. We can do better than this and look at this by age. By age, again, rent is a percentage of income by age for Everett renters. 65 years and older, 35 to 64, 25 to 34, 15 to 24, with the percentages of income going to rent at the bottom. You see that 2064 Everett senior renting households spend more than 35% of their income per month on rent, but that's half compared to the number of 35 to 64-year-old households. So let's instead, to make this more meaningful, let's look at this as a percentage of the category total. Now a real story emerges where renting senior households in the city of Everett, over 60% of them are paying 30% or more of their income to rent every month. Now there's half of them, or less than half of the next age group, 35 to 64 years old. However, if you're a senior renter, you're more than likely going to be paying more than 30% of your household income to rent. That's significant because your income progression is likely lower than a 35 to 64-year-old household, right? Similarly, 15 to 24-year-olds, there are very few of them that are renting in the city of Everett, but what are they concerned about, right? So every age group has something to be worried about, something to be concerned about from the perspective of the city, and what are we doing about rental affordability? But that changes by age of the household. And so this is extra data for context. So with that, I think I'm on my last slide. Who is housing affordability for? Who might be struggling to make the market rents in Everett and qualifying for housing assistance of some kind? It's, I don't know, your preschool teachers, your childcare workers, veterinary technicians, school bus drivers, commercial airline pilots, massage therapists, industrial mechanics. This is a selection of occupations representing 1.2 million workers who work in a job where the median wage for that occupation is $84,000 or less. Not that all of these 1.2 million people make less than $84,000 a year, but their occupation does. So they either will make a median of 84,000 or less, or they have made as a median 84,000 or less, and probably are older. This is a selection of over 440 different occupations in the central Puget Sound region, because after all, if you work in King County as in one of these roles, but you can't afford to live there, you might look in Everett or Tacoma and Pierce County. And just for context, this is the persons in a family, not a household now, but a family. 80% area median income, 30% median income by household size, number of people in the household, whether it's 2 adults and 1 kid, 1 adult, 2 kids, some other combination, doesn't matter. If this is the number of people in your family and you make at or below this income level, you are 80%, 50%, 30% of area median income. And I think this is important to share so that we understand, as we talk to people about this, what being 80% AMI really means, so that we can contextualize and really think about how high being low income really reaches in society today. So with that said, this is the end of my quick presentation for you. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, please feel free to reach out at ccollier@hasco.org. Councilmember Ryan, who invited me tonight, thank you very much, and she can also help put you in contact if you have any questions. Again, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your meeting. Now I'm back to my board meeting. So long.
Thank you, Chris Collier, for putting that together for us. I really appreciate it. When I asked him to do it, I shared with him that nobody delivers the bad news about housing prices in our region like he does. So thank you to Chris for that. I think some of the things that always pop out to me when Chris shares his presentations is just how housing costs have just that steep angle of that graph showing how high and how fast housing costs keep elevating over the years, and how wages are not keeping up with that same trajectory. And it's hard to imagine households being able to afford housing costs these days, and just the sacrifices that households are having to make. And then in addition to that, how when you're that cost burdened to make your rent, how unreasonable it is to expect people to be able to save for a home. I'm not sure, especially with the housing costs these days, like how is a first-time home buyer expected to save $100,000 for a down payment if they're already spending 50% of their income just to make rent each month? And then when I think about that, it also reminds me too about how vulnerable our renters are in our city, and how close so many families are to being evicted of just one unlucky circumstance that they run into, and one unexpected expense can really lead down a pretty difficult pathway for them. So that leads us to our next present. Other comments from other council members about Chris's presentation?
I wish he would have gone a little slower. I was trying to make notes, so we'll have to, maybe we can get that presentation from him.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
great. Be happy to ask for it. We can add that to the public record as well. I think good information there. Great. So next up, we have some folks from the Snohomish County Legal Services Housing Justice Project, and I asked them to join today to share more about the trends that they're seeing in Snohomish County, and specifically Everett, if they can, about evictions and challenges that our renters are facing. I know with my other hat, our office often gets asked for help about, hey, I have this difficult situation with my landlord. Do you have any suggestions? And I'm like, Housing Justice Project, here's their numbers. I've definitely sent you guys plenty of referrals in the last couple of years. So for the record, if you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and your titles and share a little bit more about the Housing Justice Project and Snohomish County Legal Services, just to lay the context, and then you guys also have a presentation for us. Go ahead and push the talk button.
Thank you for inviting us here today. My name is Jane Pack, and I'm the Executive Director at Snohomish County Legal Services. And today I have here with me Victoria, if you'll introduce yourself.
Thanks for having us. My name is Victoria Heitman. I'm an attorney with Snohomish County Legal Services. I'm the HJP lead staff attorney, so I'm definitely very familiar with what's going on here in Snohomish County.
And then if you guys did you want to switch the laptop around to thumb through the presentation? Is it queued up on the screen already? Great. All right, Jane, if you can take us through your slides, that'd be great.
So I've prepared a quick presentation today focusing on evictions. And before we get into that, I did want to say that at the onset of the pandemic, we saw an unprecedented drop in evictions. But before we get into that, we'll talk a little bit about Snohomish County Legal Services and the work that we've done throughout the pandemic, before the pandemic, throughout the pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic, and our recovery, equitable recovery efforts. So Snohomish County Legal Services is a nonprofit legal aid organization, and we provide free civil legal aid to low-income Snohomish County residents. And although we do provide legal services in a few different areas, our focus is really on legal areas impacting basic human needs, such as family law and housing instability and eviction. And we provide these services regardless of documentation status. We celebrated our 40th year of service last year, and we've just grown and been providing housing justice project services almost just as long. And before we get into the more Everett data, I did want to thank Chris for going first and setting the backdrop with the data. He is our data's guy, and he set up the stage. But I did want to take a step back to actually talk about Washington in general. And this graphic that I have up is, I find it really Okay, I'm back. Oh, it's a little loud. Okay, that was just a technology pivot. So this is overall Washington, and this data graphic that I pulled from the National Income Low Housing website is really our demographics, because as I'll get into county-specific data and specific to Everett, where I have the data available, we do serve extreme low income housing, and we'll get into that. But this is the demographic that we serve, and it's just a snapshot of the demographics of our clientele and those that are most impacted by eviction filings and eviction and housing instability. So we provide housing, housing stability, housing legal issues, and eviction services. And we're proud to be able to have done that throughout the pandemic, and even with protections. And you'll see in 2020 eviction filings, we saw an unprecedented drop in eviction filings. In 2020, that was 418. And in 2021, that was 327. And just for context, Snohomish County is one of the counties with one of the, I think it's like the fifth, between the fourth to the sixth highest eviction rates. And I probably have it somewhere in my notes. But as emergency tenant protections and rental assistance started decreasing, we started to see eviction filings climb back up to 816 in 2022, and then into 2023. And that's a reminder that without policy intervention, we are returning to our former state of chaos that is not only inevitable, but is going to be exacerbated as people recover from the pandemic. While many of us are already putting the pandemic behind us and already starting onto recovery, that's not the case for a lot of our clients. They will be on a very long road to recovery. So with that, I did want to call attention to just the needs in the county. The graphic that I have up top is really interesting. So 211 is kind of like the hotline for community needs. Sorry, I have it here. So let me take a step back, I'm sorry. So this is just a tip of the iceberg for today's presentation. I'll just be focusing on evictions. We will touch on housing issues and our data and numbers, but the presentation today will be focused on eviction and eviction filings. Okay, and then, so a little bit, sorry, taking a step back for her. So we do, Snohomish County Legal Services houses the county's Housing Justice Project program. It is a nationally recognized program, and we are also a service provider for court-appointed right to counsel for eviction defense. And then during the pandemic, we also coordinated and worked with the Volunteers of America Dispute Resolution in the Eviction Resolution Pilot Program. And we seat 5 of the 7 right to counsel attorneys in the county. So I say all of this to say that based on not just the data that I have available and our experience, so coming out of the pandemic, these are what I believe the eviction trends and the forecast for evictions will be.
Question on this before you move on to this, from this chart. So is this the top 10 zip codes for evictions? Is that what we're looking at?
Sorry, I took a step back, so I will actually get into the chart.
Oh, okay, okay, sorry.
I got ahead of myself. So this first chart that you're seeing is a chart that I pulled from the 211 Washington website, which is 211 is a hotline for essential community services, referrals, and resources. So this is where people call, it's a number, and they get funneled out. And it's very interesting, this chart, because that's where a lot of our clients and community get their resources. They're calling this number, and then they're referred out for community referrals for essential resources. So I pulled this, and this is the top 10 zip codes for the highest rates of requests for housing and shelter by zip code in the entire state. So if you notice, and I highlighted 2 of the zip codes that we serve are, it's numbers 2 and 4. So that is just giving the context of the community. So that is a hotline that people are calling to get needs and referrals, and that's how a lot of them, a lot of clients get to us, and a lot of the community members get to us. So, and below, I don't have specific data, but it's just a snapshot of, in addition to housing instability and eviction and just those basic needs, we are working with clients that are experiencing additional barriers to services. And this is just some, I gave a few examples from our data of how clients come to us, their housing situations. They're coming to us in staying in a car, emergency shelter, rental, transitional housing. They are experiencing disabilities, veterans fleeing from domestic violence, and those are in addition, and barriers in addition to their housing instability. So before we move on, so we are going to move on, and even with the passage of statewide tenant protections, our eviction filings are increasing at a clip rate, and I expect that to continue to increase and even exceed our historical filing numbers. So this first chart on the left is our data that we have available to us and court filing data. So you see the trend with eviction filings, and then I've just captured this information into a very elementary graphic that doesn't move. So the data, so we have the court filings, and you can actually see in 2020 and 2021 the numbers that I referenced. And then on the right side of that, when I refer to housing cases, these are cases that we serve, because what you're seeing in court with eviction filings and evictions are just the tip of the iceberg. So we, with our housing justice project program and Right to Counsel, we assist with just the full spectrum of housing issues that may or may never get to court, and our goal is to just provide those services. But that is the full snapshot of cases that we serve in our housing department at Snohomish County Legal Services year over year. And then on the last column is our numbers that we have served in our Right to Counsel for Eviction Defense program. And then at the bottom, you'll see a 2024 year to date. So as you know, we've just completed April, so the data that I have available is up until just about yesterday. So we're into May 1st right now. So what I've done is that 20 to 24 year to date data is accurate. So as of yesterday, we had 720 court eviction filings so far, and we're not even halfway through the year. And so far, we have opened 1,003 housing cases and have court-appointed attorneys on 336 of those cases so far. So what I've done for the remainder of the year, just to give you a visual going forward, if it continues at this rate, and you can see in the graphic, it's actually kind of going up on probably a higher trajectory. But if it continues on this average rate of approximately 180 filings per month, we are going to exceed our historical data filings from 2019, which was really the full year before the pandemic. So those are numbers these are estimates that I've annualized over the year with the data that I have available. And then the right to counsel number that I have in red, at this rate, we are at capacity with court-appointed attorneys. So just to put it on your radars, if we're continuing at this rate, I'm not sure how we'd be able to keep up in the court system with the attorneys that we have, but just to provide a perspective. And then below that, I've run some of our data specific to Everett residents. So we serve the entire Snohomish County, but our Housing Justice Project, a large percent of the clients come from our Everett residents. So this is the data that I have from 2023 up until year-to-date 2024. So about the entire year of 2023 to April, the end of April 2024, we have 1,243 cases. Sorry, actually, that is cases. That's not, so how we define it, it's actually cases. So those are not representative of the household and the people that we serve, but those are 1,243 cases are Everett residents and are extremely low income. And as y'all know, that is below 30% of the area median income, or AMI. Of that, 31% of the clients that we serve with housing issues, 31% of those are right to counsel clients. So those are, you're in court, you get a court-appointed attorney, and it's a right to counsel case. And 73% of those cases are non-payment of rent. They can't afford their rent, so there is a component of non-payment of rent in their court case. Now I don't have it in my chart because it gets very into the granular data. But so I've condensed a lot of this information. But in October of 2023, we saw a huge jump in eviction filings, passing over 200 eviction filings, and that made the news. You know, everyone's aware of that October filing, but it hasn't gotten much better. It hasn't reached a 200, but it's pretty close, getting 190s. And so I averaged it out, and it's about 180 eviction filings per month if I've averaged it out for 2024 so far. Now I do want to, okay, so that was the end of my, so I did want to segue a little bit and talk about the impact of eviction. From the time of a court order, you have as little as 3 days to get out of your space if you are evicted without an agreement or whatever, any other accommodation or agreement in place. That is a lot. And I do want to talk about the importance that we need to understand with the impact of evictions. So if we keep people housed through our work, we try to connect and provide holistic services. So we know it's a burden on our other systems, healthcare system, food bank, shelters, those community partners that we work with. And I do want to say that with right to counsel, with those that do receive a court-appointed attorney, these are low-income They are court-appointed attorney eligible, so they are low income. They would not otherwise be able to afford an attorney in their defense. And so that is something to note, is that those that are receiving court-appointed attorneys are income eligible. And even though we can serve up to 200% of the federal poverty level, you've seen from the data that I've presented that many of our clients fall way below that, and most of them are in below 30% of the area median income. And then just for perspective, I know that we've been talking about AMI a lot. So the kind of rough equivalent of the 200% of the federal poverty level is about the 80% area median income. I don't do the math. So lastly, I do want to, well, before I get to my last point, I always say that, I should stop saying last point. So there was an interesting study by Matthew Desmond that did talk about the suburbanization of evictions. And what is interesting and why I bring that up is he specifically called out not just Snohomish County, but Everett as he identified it as a high eviction, kind of an emerging eviction tract, census tract. So that is an interesting read. I won't get too much into that, but that is something that is very interesting. So to kind of sum it up, if we continue at this rate of 180 evictions a month, where are they going to go? We don't have enough housing. Living on the streets, it's best to keep them housed, and that's really the goal of what we do. So I just wonder, where are they going once they get evicted? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Victoria, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just kind of as a reminder of the pandemic. So that occurred, in around March of 2020. That's when the moratorium on eviction was implemented by Governor Inslee to stop and halt eviction filings. There were some exceptions there, some few exceptions to bypass evictions through those mandates. During that period of time, as Jane had mentioned, we were still serving. We were there through that time period with people facing those hardships and barriers. And through that time, that is where the eviction resolution pilot program was piloted. We were one of the 6 counties to pilot that program, and so we were part of that. And so we were able to see how, both landlords and tenants could work together towards the issues of behind on rent, and how we can work together to come towards a resolution that would benefit both the landlord and the tenant. Along with that came changes to the laws of tenant rights and protections. So May of 2021, that was where a lot of tenant protections came, and the right to counsel. So pre-May of 2021, there was no right to counsel for people that were facing evictions. And so within that, we were able to help a lot more people get better resolutions, even with the landlord as well, to come to a resolution, because before that our service was day of service, day of the hearing. And so now with that right to an attorney, we're able to provide a better service to the tenant to get their needs met. The eviction resolution pilot program, even though it was piloted in the fall of 2020. It was mandated and implemented in May of 2021 when the new laws had changed. There was different changes of the orders of of what each of the counties needed to do. Then in the fall of 2021, that was when things started opening up for evictions to being filed. So that's where it's kind of a little slower. And then as soon as the moratorium was lifting and ending, that was where you can see those increased in filings. That eviction resolution pilot program ended July 1st of 2023. So a lot of the protections and requirements that a landlord had to do in order to evict a person for non-payment of rent is no longer implemented or mandated. Excuse me. And if you're not aware of like kind of what those hoops are, there are Snohomish County Superior Court orders that specifically outline the eviction resolution pilot program. And they had to provide a specific notice, they had to offer a repayment plan, they had to go to a mediation, they had to get a certificate saying they did the program before they were able to actually proceed with that eviction filing. And with that program, it generally gave a tenant about 45 days longer before the eviction took place. And so for a non-payment of rent, generally it's a 14-day notice. You're behind on rent. Day 15, they could be served with court documents. There's generally a response about 7 to 9 days after that, receiving that notice. There's generally a court hearing about 2 weeks after that. Once a case is filed, it is on their record, and it will make it harder for them to find housing. Regardless if the case got dismissed, regardless if it's settled, it's on their record. There will also be a judgment entered against them for the unpaid rent, court costs, attorney's fees. So there's 2 hits to their background and record, the eviction filing and the money judgment. There is also an order to have the sheriff remove them. Jane was saying it could be as little as 3 days, and so that's generally what happens is the sheriff will come, post documents on their door, the sheriffs will return to execute it. And it's generally about a week after that court hearing, but it could be as early as 3 days.
Victoria, can you share a little bit more about, like, what does a resolution look like? Like, what is an agreement? What are some agreements that a landlord and a tenant can come to, and how successful have those resolution proceedings been for your clients?
Great question. So a resolution looks different to everybody and to different clients. So a resolution for one could be a payment plan, especially those that are back into the workforce, do have that job, are able to pay their rent going forward, and just have a little bit more to pay off that back balance. Because the ERPP program ended and that mandate to offer a payment plan is gone, that would have been something to prevent a lot of these 73% of non-payment of rent issues currently here in Everett. I mean, I don't know exactly the percentage of the working families here that would have benefited, but it was probably a good portion of them. Another resolution would be more time to vacate. 14 days generally is not enough, especially to save up money, find alternative housing before the court proceedings. Because an eviction could be filed day 15 and it's already impacting them. So a good resolution for a landlord too would be to have that conversation with the tenant to try to come to a resolution to avoid that eviction filing.
Great. And the clients that you guys work with, how, the legal field is scary, not gonna lie. How informed are they on what their rights are? Because when I think about landlord-tenant relationships, there's a huge power imbalance between a landlord and a tenant. And so if you could share a little bit more about when tenants come to you asking for help, how aware are they of what their rights are? And, are they surprised that maybe they have more legal footing than they thought they did? Or if you could just share about that, that'd be great.
Before Victoria gets into it, she knows it, the work inside and out. I do want to give our experience on serving the vulnerable clients. In our experience, just being able to assist them is they're facing multiple barriers that impact their ability to get assistance, to process what's happening, to process the information. So, but with that, I'll let Victoria get into the technicals.
The majority of our clients are shocked. They have no idea what is going to happen within less than 30 days of the eviction. There's a lot of controversial news out there, especially relating to King County. This is not King County. This is Snohomish County. It's much different. There's no protections like there are in other cities throughout Washington. So a lot of our clients, they're just shocked and they feel very overwhelmed, especially if they don't connect with us until after the notice period or right when the court is happening, and then they hear, I'm going to be evicted after this court hearing. Like it's so impactful to them on top of everything else that's going on within their household. The biggest hurdle for a good chunk of the community too are people that their educational level is they don't really understand what we're talking about sometimes due to their educational level of understanding. Also, those with language barriers, we do have service to provide people with a language barrier. We have translator service. That is the best we can do. It's more beneficial if we were speaking their native language for them to really understand and understand what's going on. A lot of the documents that they're receiving does look very intimidating to them as well. And if they're not able to read or interpret what's going on, a good portion of those filings, we don't have the data on here, but there is a large percentage of evictions that were defaulted. Defaulted means they failed to respond, and the sheriffs are coming. And that's how they reach out, is because the sheriffs are already there. And we would have to quickly try to help them, give them advice that day before the sheriffs are going to remove them.
Jane, I think I saw you reaching for the mute button. Do you have something you want to add?
And it is a huge barrier because when those cases come to us, we treat them as emergencies. We drop everything. We have to go to court that day, file a stay, and argue the case 2 steps back. So a lot of it could be mitigated or preventable. So it's a huge burden on my team. I know my team runs out there and they have to go out there. I don't go out there, but I know that it's a huge burden on them, and dealing with the increasing cases and the capacity is a real concern that we face every day.
I also wanted to touch on, I forgot to, so as Jane was saying, these are our cases. The Northwest Justice Project also is a statewide legal aid organization, and they too house right to counsel attorneys here in Snohomish County. So we're not seeing or including their numbers for who they're serving here in Snohomish County or even Everett locally.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yes, sorry, and to add on to Victoria's point, so the Northwest Justice Project, we seat 5 of the 7, and they have the other 2. So that is, thank you for pointing that out, that I didn't include their data. So we have the court filing data and our data, but in terms of the overall picture, please take that into consideration.
Thanks. Great. Any questions from council members?
I just want one clarification. On your first chart, where you have the zip code, so that means, if I'm reading it right, Everett has number 2 and number 4 slot for number of evictions, highest rates of evictions. Am I saying that right?
The highest request for housing assistance through
Housing, okay.
211. So I actually have my data, and so as of 2023, we were the 5th highest county with eviction rates. I think I butchered that. We were the 5th highest eviction rates, Snohomish County.
Okay, thank you. A lot of information.
I just wanted to clarify, because maybe it might have, so the 211 number is the statewide number. So that chart has Everett. That's showing Everett on there.
Yes, Ms. Gregerson.
I'm just wondering if you have found that evictions are more frequent from like larger property, like larger landlords that have maybe a building that's got lots of units, or if you see lots of like small landlords that maybe have a smaller portfolio, I guess you would say, or if you don't see trends like that, I don't know.
Generally, the smaller landlords aren't aware of what the processes are and procedures. So majority of our cases, we are seeing like apartment complexes, because there's just not the education there needed for landlords to understand the processes and procedures.
Great. Any last comments or more dire news for us? Great. Well, thank you guys for the work that you do to help keep people housed, for sure. Sounds like the pilot project was a big success, and then it's unfortunate that it sunsetted. And yeah, I think we all know too that keeping people housed is better for the community and that household than letting them be homeless. So yeah, I think it'd be great for this committee to look into ways that we can help protect our renters, and then using the data and the information that we have from people who are doing the work to inform that work, I think is really helpful. So thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. Great. Anything else this evening?
Well, I'm kind of go back on that and how we can get information about resources to all of our people that live out there that rent, because over half of Everett are renters. So maybe that's something we can look at some point. Maybe we have a good system in place already, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that fall through the cracks on that. And then I don't know if there's any rent resources for people to prevent them from getting close to being kicked out or anything.
Yeah.
You know, would be nice if there was something, if you lose your job, you can fall back on some kind of resource, but I'm not aware of one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure of any either, unless you guys know. I think we get that request quite a bit at the county too of, like you were saying, I'm starting this new job, but it's not for 6 weeks. What do I do in the meantime? And that safety net's not always there. Jane?
So we do maintain and update a resource list. It's frustrating. We do try to update it as best we can, and we do have several different resources which Victoria developed, so she can speak to the specifics of the resource list. But yeah, we do need more resources, but we do try to educate forward and where we can't help, or just to help our clients have a little semblance of control and help them plan next steps in their life, even if they are evicted.
Generally, 211 is the greatest resource, and they have more of the direct referrals and whatnot. And they get funding from various sources too. Volunteers of America facilitate the rental assistance types of programs. And so it comes in waves. You know, sometimes they'll have it and then they'll be out and then they'll have it again. So we always recommend people to just keep calling. You never know, they might get that funding. There's also local community partners that sometimes have funding, like St. Vincent de Paul, Cocoon House, YWCA has a rapid rehousing program. And so when people reach out to us, we give them whatever resources that we have, a list of numbers for them to call.
That's great. Anything else? That's great. All right, thank you again for being here tonight. I think we can wrap it up, call it a Wednesday. It's 5:54 and we're adjourned. Thanks.